This video is not intended for anyone 13 or younger. Hello and hello viewers and welcome back to another My Hero Academia chapter reaction. I'm your humble host Josh24214 and last time we had chapter 293. At the end of the previous chapter, Giga finally fell down due to the sleeping drug, although we did have a bit of fear of him getting out of its bondage. And we had more of the fighting between Dabi and Todoroki as Midoriya does his inspirational speech that he used on Todoroki during the whole tournament arc, saying that Endeavor is not your power. You have use your own power. And that got Endeavor back into the fray, snapped out of his existential crisis with the whole Dabi reveal, and we will be continuing with chapter 294. So before we start, make sure to sanitize your hand and keep the count low. And I know there's a vaccine out there in North America. It's going to take a while to get everybody vaccinated, and we need to be healthy as possible. So make sure to keep washing your hands until then. And let us dive into chapter 294. So let's dive in. Before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It only takes 2 simple clicks. Click, click. Enjoy the episode. And to start off this chapter with chapter 294, we do get a title drop. We do have the usual My Hero Academia by Kohei Horikoshi. We do have the writers and the translators as always, Bob Cook and etc. etc. As we weirdly start getting a reminder that, yeah, Crust is dead after Crust saving Aizawa from being almost disintegrated, as we see all the wounded heroes with Aizawa, Mukuro, Dragon Lady, Gran Torino, who is basically at death's door with getting thumbed to death, as we see Lockdown and Manuel still there, finally dropping them off. As we see the injured Hawks, who's basically had his wings burned to a crisp and probably may never use them because of Dabi's Disco Inferno, and Present Mike, who is basically having a bit of an angry fit towards the Mad Doctor, most likely as insulting him. And probably Lamanium is continuing saying, the fact that the sedative took effect. Oh, that's probably best Gina saying. The fact that the sedative took effect here and now surely is no mere coincidence. As we continue on the next page, we see the beaten Mount Lady still on the ground, as we get more answers to, I think, Midnight is still pretty much alright still. We're not sure if Midnight's dead at this point. It's good to remind that Midnight may be okay. She's basically knocked out. We have Endeavor on the ground, weirdly enough. As I thought he was last time we had Endeavor flying up to Giga, but now he's on the ground. Okay, that's a weird continuity issue. And Midoriya finally hitting the ground after Dabi just basically swat him away. We have Best Jeanist trying to use his powers as he starts having nosebleeds from probably using too much of his power. His brain all at once, basically messing with his brain, with Best Jeanist continuing his monologue, saying, little by little, so many of us wore down the giant until he was weak enough for the drug to take hold. So he had to be beaten down a lot to finally get that damn drug to work. And Best Jeanist continues saying, even the thinnest threads can come together and brand a mighty rope. And Best Jeanist continues saying, but had even a single thread frayed and come loose, all would have been lost. That I do believe. As we see, Best Jeanist still concentrating, trying to tie up Giga, And the two League of Villains of Spinner and Mr. Compress is basically Gig is basically out of the fight while we have Dobby and Todoroki still fighting it out. And Best Jeanist continues his binding, saying, "Now, one final push." But before that gets back to that, we continue with Lamenium still being a goddamn badass and broken, and basically decking a high-end Nomu that came to help in the face. And probably that high-end Nomu caused an earthquake, or was it the impact of getting crashing to the ground? As the high-end Nomu just as Lamenium continues saying, "No wonder the heroes over there are having a rough time. The moves these things make are simple, but their speed and toughness are off the charts." So yeah, they're basically high-end Nomu, so they're going to be tough as balls. As the Lamenium continues taking on this super brute, and Edith taking on metal eye covering, as Lamenium continues saying, "Each one's gotta be as strong as the Nomu in Kyushu. You don't want to get tagged by these guys." And Ida continues saying, "You're in no state to take a hit from these things. Great explo-" And yeah, also a reminder that Bakugo finally chose his hero name, and it's as silly as it is, and his new name is Great Explosion Murder God Dynamite. You must retreat. And we cut away to Bakugo just gah, as we get into his inner monologue saying, "Crap, there ain't a sappy comeback, 'cause he's right," as he does his explosion trying to get away. As Lamenium's female friend is still burnt, and Best Jeanist is doing his best to keep Giga down, and Bakugo continues saying, "Anyhow, just gotta keep dodging so Jeanist is off their radar. At last, I can redirect the resources spent on..." Oh, that's Best Jeanist's inner dialogue saying, "At last, I can redirect the resources spent on restraining the giant towards the League of Villains," as he just trying to bind them even harder, as we quickly cut away to a usual 2/3 page of Mr. Compress super zoomed in, with probably the next dialogue is basically Mr. Compress saying, this titty tie-up job prevents me from touching the cables, and without physical touch I cannot activate my compress quirk," as Mr. Compress has tried to get out of the bonds that Best Jeanist did, with Mr. Compress saying, "Such dire straits, and all I can do is tickle my own behind." Also, we're ill. With Mr. Compress continuing saying, "The boss fares no better, as Shigaraki's still basically out cold until he can wake up, and that'll be bad." As for the next two panels, where on the next page it's all dark, with Mr. Compress saying, "You summoned us together, did you not? Told us to run amok, right? What are we supposed to think when even your act is cut short? This amounted to a trap. You still haven't destroyed a darn thing yet. What about all the carnage, Mr. Compress? You saw Shigaraki basically Thanos'd a lot of heroes and basically destroyed a whole town to do it." And Mr. Compress is saying, it's just as our associate Spinner says." As we quickly cut away to Dobby and Toga still trying to get back to the others, as Mr. Compress continues the dialogue saying, "Dobby, young Toga, and I have yet to achieve our dreams." As we as that gets rudely interrupted by Best Jeanist just basically tightening the other League of Villains with Mr. Compress, Spinner, and Shigaraki, and with Best Jeanist saying blackout bind as he's tried to choke everybody who's still bound. Totally a hero thing to do, just to knock them out unconscious as Mr. Compress continues his inner monologue saying, does our show end here? As Mr. Compress saying, speaking to Spinner, saying, Spinner, I love the League, as Spinner is doing his weirdest face ever while having his neck choked in. As Mr. Compress continues saying, a collection of warped minds who never bothered praying into each other's past. Just a band of egotists. Egotists. As Spinner continues saying, Tomura is the key, as Spinner's not kind of hearing, he's getting his neck choked in. With the weird art by Horikoshi, as always, Mr. Compress continues his inner monologue saying, the timing must be right. When the heroes are a bit further and the Nomu are in optimal position, as Mr. Compress speaks to Spinner saying, I shall buy you 5 seconds during which to rouse the boss. As we cut to the next page, we have Mr. Compress going to his back pockets with Mr. Compress saying, every decent performance requires a good assistance. As Mr. Compress he touches his pocket and basically activates his quirk, basically taking a huge chunk out of himself. Oh, that's not going to be pleasant at all. With Mr. Compress saying, my dream, my blood-bound duty. The reason I'm here. So, are we getting into Mr. Compress's origins here? Are we getting backstory of Mr. Compress? We never got any background with Mr. Compress. I think the only thing we ever got that he was a performer before becoming a supervillain. As we see Best Genius's shocked reaction as Mr. compresses his own side just to get enough loose to get his hand free. He's working hand free with Mr. Compress's inner monologue saying, gouging out my own flesh gives my arm room to maneuver and free use of my arm. As Mr. Compress plans to compress Spinner and Shigaraki into his marbles with a huge chunk of his flesh basically gone, and I got a bad feeling Mr. Compress is going to die as well to blood loss. As Mr. Compress continues saying, means I can do this, as he catches the 2 marbles and probably stashed them away. As we see Lemenium seeing this, and I think the next panel we see Mr. Compress trying to run away up Giga's back, I think? As Mr. Compress continues saying, don't believe for a single moment that you're the only ones giving your lives for a cause of prime into ready for a taste of prime entertainment? As Mr. Compress starts climbing up the sleeping Giga's back, as Best Genius freaks out about this, saying, maiming his own body, really? Nevertheless, that as Best Genius continues saying, this wound is fatal. You have no hope of escaping. And yeah, this is probably going to be the end of Mr. Compress. And he's probably going to die at the end of this arc. So we got 2 good characters, 2 good villains, basically dead at this point. As Mr. Compress saying his inner monologue while Best Genius tries to stop Mr. Compress by using his own clothes against him, saying, "Bound my own clothing, however, bound or not, so long as my hand is in position," as one of his hands is grabbed, touching him on the shoulder, and Mr. Compress compresses his shoulder, ripping more of his flesh trying to escape, and also ripping through his clothes. As Mr. Compress saying, "I can make quick work of this." As Skeptic interrupts saying, "Ah, you, over here. You're running, right? Free me too then." And Mr. Compress pretty much obliges to Skeptic, as Mr. Compress continues saying, "Daring escapes and deception are my forte." As we see Mr. Compress is spewing up blood from both of those injuries. Yeah, I'm pretty much going to say Mr. Compress is going to die at the end of this arc, and he's not going to make it. I'll be surprised if he actually does survive this. I mean, Mr. Compress was a pretty good character. I thought he was broken before Lemonium butting in, compressing people. And yeah, if we're gonna lose Mr. Compress as well, I hope whoever replaces Twice and Mr. Compress are still as good as ever. But I mean, if you're gonna have to kill off good characters, make sure they go down in their ball of glory and awesome. And yeah, Horikoshi still keeps that up. As Mr. Compress is in a dialogue kicks in, continuing saying, "Which means I am the man who will save our team from certain doom," being Theatro going through theater mode and being an entertainer. As on the next page, "Oh, we're doing this now. Okay." As Mr. Compress brings up a name I thought we were never going to get, like a few arcs down the line, but we're doing this now? We're bringing him into this? Oh my god, Horikoshi, it's not even Christmas yet, and you're giving me a lot of good Christmas gifts here. With lore and all that stuff. As Mr. Compress brings up the name Ojai Haramiya, also known as the Perilous Thief. Remember who the Perilous Thief was? That was the guy who was brought up way back at the UA festival by Gentle Criminal as one of the names that Gentle brought up. So that's the second name of our true foreshadowing Messiah. And Horikoshi, thank you for bringing this character's name up again. I thought you completely forgot about him, but as Mr. Compress saying, "A criminal from days gone by," as we get another shot of Ojirai, the Perilous Thief again, from the Gentle talking photo, as Perilous Thief is busting out of the window, with Mr. Compress saying, in his inner monologue explaining, saying, "Just when the current system began setting into place," so this was probably in the early days of the Hero Society, Perilous Thief target the fattened pockets of the sham heroes. He preached reformation while returning what he pilfered back to the streets. So basically, the Perilous Thief is basically an equivalent to Robin Hood, who steals from the rich and gives to the poor. And so that's Mr. Compress's theology, taking away the fattened pigs of society and giving it back to the poor, which is a good mantra, but yeah, this is. And I know basically that also Japan's version is just basically a phantom thief, which if you ever played Persona 5, yeah, that's pretty much what they're ripping off with Perilous Thief, and also there's like a lot of versions of Phantom Thieves, and and also referring to other titles that other manga who did this trope. And I could say about that, but we don't have any time for this. So I'm still like shocked at this with Gentle's foreshadowing finally coming back to this. And this also brings up the foreshadowing of Mr. Compress's statement during 291 with him saying about the bloodline. So we continue this dialogue of Mr. Compress saying, "Listen, Ashiro, our family's lineage is all about exposing injustice that religious, righteous blood runs in our veins." What the hell? But that weird revelation is still continuing. We cut quickly back to with Dabi and Todoroki still continuing saying, "Toya," as they're going to use both of them using their flash fire fist, as Dabi continues saying, "Sorry about this, Shoto, change your plans." As I think Dabi uses jet burn as he tries to purify his youngest brother in cleansing fire. And Dabi just continues saying, "Inji Todoroki isn't completely broken yet. If he passes out now, there's no point in going on with this little performance. Sorry, Masterpiece." As Mr. Compress interrupts this weird family feud with Mr. Compress saying, "To me, Dabi." As we continue with, "Oh God," as Mr. Compress continues his inner dialogue saying, "Perilous Thief, the reformation that you could not achieve, I now hand off to my boss." As we have the two marbles probably given to, or probably have Dabi turned into a marble as well, with Mr. Compress continuing his speech saying, "I am Harama's I am Perilous Thief's great great grandson." We had the modern version of Perilous Thief the whole time with Mr. Compress? Oh my god, that was 5 years ago with Mr. Compress showing up 5 years ago. As we get more of Mr. Compress's dialogue, and he basically takes over the rest of the chapter, with the rest of the chapter with him saying, "The Paranormal Liberation Army, or the Quirk Liberation Army. No, the League of Villains, Shigaraki. The Bandit King's blood flows within me. Will change the world in my stead." So yeah, Mr. Compress knows he's going to die. As he continues saying, "What's that you say? You barely noticed me?" As Mr. Compress finally takes off his famous mask that we always seen him in. We never see his real face as well in real life without the mask, saying, with Mr. Compress saying, "All part of the act. It's all for that ta-da moment." As we quickly cut back to basically the last page of the chapter, second to last page of the chapter, as we see an unmasked Mr. Compress, and we finally see his real face, as basically Mr. Compress takes over this page as well, with probably holding on to Dabi's marble as well, with Mr. Compress continuing saying, "That's the true trick is saved until the end." Oh, so he probably turned, oh, what the hell, we have Spinner out of his, so with that, he uses the marble containing Spinner and Shigaraki. They pop out with Mr. Compress saying, "Voila! The curtain rises on the first and final escape artist performance of Mr. Compress." As we get a shot of Shigaraki still unconscious. And that's basically the end of chapter 294 with final performance. And yeah, this is basically Mr. Compress's backstory, origin, and basically his big hurrah before, kicking the bucket with basically taking out his shoulder and stomach on the side. And yeah, this chapter, I was really shocked that we finally got Mr. Compress's. We get two big reveals of Mr. Compress that we know that one, he is the great great grandson of Perilous Thief, who Gentle Criminal brought up a long time ago. And also, we get Mr. Compress without his mask, and he looks pretty young. I thought he was going to be a little older with all the dialogue, saying that he's actually probably in his basically 30s or 40s. I can tell by his face, maybe. And yeah, I think this may be Mr. Compress's big hurrah. I'll be really shocked if Mr. Compress would survive this arc, and with having like a huge chunk of his stomach and his shoulder basically self-sacrificed to save the rest of his League of Villains and the Vanguard actions, the last remains of the Vanguard. But Toga is still out there, so we don't know what she's doing at this point. Probably tried to escape or tried to get back to the others. Well, she's gonna go freaking nuts while Mr. Compress is basically dead as well. So I can't wait for what we're gonna get for chapter 295. And also, a lot of a lot of crazy stuff has been going on throughout these few chapters. Horikoshi, you're gonna get me tired after all these shocks and surprises. And it's not even Christmas yet. All we need now for everything to go even crazier, that we get Gentle and La Brava joining into the fight. And that would be like a huge, huge Christmas gift for me because Gentle and La Brava are basically my favorite villains in the art in so far. And I do like those two, and I would love to see those two what they've been doing while all this crazy nonsense is going on. I wouldn't mind even if it was my birthday gift or from Horikoshi or a awesome Christmas gift from Horikoshi. Yeah. So yeah, Gentle is basically the if you ever seen Comic Explained like this Marvel character, Mad Jim Jaspers. And for me, this is Gentle, Criminal, and La Brava are basically my Mad Jim Jaspers, and I would go freaking nuts if I ever see Gentle and La Brava showing up again. Even if it's a cameo, I don't even care. And also, I would love to see like the other manga chapters bringing me up into a scene of seeing those two before I get to see it. I would love to see any of them bringing me up saying, "Oh, Josh is gonna love this chapter and he's gonna go ballistic," with Gentle and the Brava coming back into the story. So yeah, I can't wait for chapter 294, and I hope 295 continues this awesome trend of these last few chapters being nuts with Dobby, Mr. Compress, and all that crazy shenanigans going on. How do you make this month even better? So until then, have a good day, everybody, and I will see you next time. So bye for now.